Yes, okay, right. It's time now to go to Lettice Bromovsky, a political commentator for Young Voices UK, because for me, this is really sinister, really dangerous stuff. The idea now that if you're a journalist and you manage to get hold of a scoop through a leaked document, use your political nous, your journalistic nous, or in the case of some people, just find it left on a train, and then you report that, you might go to prison for up to 14 years just for embarrassing our government. So what would have happened, for example, to the individual who exposed our health secretary as a liar, right? Or exposed him as a bit of a hypocrite? What would have happened there? I mean, Dominic Cummings might be staring down the barrel of a 14 stretch now at the moment, wouldn't he? I suppose he's revealing stuff that's happening, and did happen in government. He took pictures from inside government buildings and released them out there. But do we really want to live in this kind of country now where, a journalist has to weigh up whether or not they want to go to prison? You know what? I think this might have the opposite effect. I honestly think this will have the opposite effect. I think it will just create journalistic martyrs who want to do it anyway. But Lettice Bromovsky joins me, political contributor to Young Voices UK. Good evening, Lettice. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me on, Patrick.
Thank you for being on. That's fine. So, look, talk to me about this. What's your general view on what's been going on here? 14 years.
No, so I completely agree with everything you just said. I think the proposed changes to this legislation are incredibly dangerous. They are a direct attack on both the freedoms of our press and our own civil liberties. Free press, freedom of the press, that's the foundation of our democratic society. So I think these proposed limitations should be viewed as a threat. What's the role of a journalist if not to expose the truth? Why should it be the role and responsibility of journalists to protect our politicians from their own indiscretions and wrongdoings?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, if you don't get caught on camera cheating on your wife, then none of this ever happens, does it, Lettice?
Yeah, exactly. With that particular example, with the CCTV leak, it was both extremely embarrassing for the government and Matt, obviously, but it also demonstrated further than that the massive hypocrisy at the highest levels of government.
It did.
So, yeah.
It did, absolutely. And also, I think, again, you know what? I was wrong about this. This keeps happening, but I was wrong about this. Where I thought once that had been exposed, I didn't think that we could have now a Prime Minister or a future Health Secretary or whatever really standing before us and proposing massive serious restrictions going forward anymore, because we'd had the G7 issue, we'd had Boris maskless in the back of a taxi, we had Matt Hancock doing whatever he was doing, and it looked a bit weird, and it certainly felt it, and I had to watch that video on repeat for at least 2 days in this studio, and I was sick everywhere. And but we had all these people so they've stopped caring, right? But actually, Boris Johnson did manage to stand before us and slap us with some of the potentially most draconian rules that this country has ever seen. So there's that. Are you concerned generally now about where free speech might be at in this country? I know it's part of a much wider debate. This is just one element of it, isn't it?
No, definitely. I mean, this isn't the first time that this government's tried to curtail our freedoms. Obviously, we've had the past year of massive restrictions. But also, it was only a month or so ago that there were proposed changes to the policing bill, which tried to limit protests all the way down to the tiny details of how much noise there could be at the protest. I mean, is that not the point of a protest, to disrupt, to be heard? This is definitely a step in the wrong direction for freedom, getting our freedoms back, freedom of speech and general civil liberties.
Are you concerned about the direction of travel that we're in now, in the sense of that, it would have been thought unthinkable previously that we would ever have things like mask wearing in public, enforced mask wearing in public? It would have been unthinkable to think that we would essentially have mandatory vaccination or something resembling it. And now we're starting to see these things put forward almost on a whim, like you've just said there. Limits to protest that actually, frankly, you can end up just getting arrested for basically being there at all, right? And now we've got this idea now that if a top-level government source, right, handed me something that exposed our Prime Minister as doing something literally criminal, and I reported that, I might do 14 years in prison. I mean, this is more China than Britain, isn't it?
Completely agree. No, it's massively dangerous for our society on the whole. And even as far as all these new restrictions or new mandatory vaccinations for care workers, or even, to go into nightclubs and things, you have to be double vaxxed now. That's coercion. This should be entirely unacceptable. And just 2 years ago, this would have been deemed completely unacceptable. No one would ever have thought that we would ever be in a position where the government is controlling so many aspects of our lives.
No, absolutely not. And it's been, hopefully, it's over soon. But one of my big concerns really, Lettice, is that now they've got the whiff of it, that they just continue with it, because I'm not sure that once you give someone these powers, I mean, even there's so many people, even whose job it is now to stand outside the doors at Tesco's and tell us all to put masks on. I've got a feeling a lot of them love it. They love the power, so goodness knows what's happening inside the Home Office.